Another week, another Friday, another round of Friday night prime time, and today we tackle one of the greats. The Virginia International Raceway is a roller coaster in its undulation and merciless in its zero margin for error nature. Our three classes are in for a treat, but also in for a treat is myself, Zach Sweeney, with Cameron Roger alongside me to call all of the action, with Iki Merikala behind the scenes trying to follow each and every single bit of the action. Cam, first of all, it's nice to be back in the booth for Friday Night Primetime. We were in the very capable hands of William Chadwick and Lorenzo Bonda for last time out at Long Beach, and what a race that was, it must be said. A lot of ups and downs, to put it in the bluntest way possible, but we're here for round number 8. We're at the Virginia International Raceway. What can we expect?
Well, we can expect some fast and tight action. It's certainly a very old school track, and taking 3 classes around it is going to be tricky enough. And of course, with the track recently getting an update to the iRacing platform as well, it's certainly a slightly new challenge for these drivers. And as you see on the schedule here, we are on week 8 of 12 for season 1 of 2023. And we've had some great tracks, and we still have 5 races left this season to finish it up and see what it's going to do.
It's gone quickly though, hasn't it? It's weird. I don't know. Time flies with Friday Night Primetime. It's weird. It's like already there's another week gone, but you can see there we go to the Nürburgring in a week's time, then Road America, Detroit, and Sebring to round off the final 2 rounds of the first season in 2023 for the IMSA iRacing series. Of course, after this season concludes, I'm sure there'll be another vote for you guys at home to have your say to what we tackle for season number 2 for yet another 12-week, 3-month run all the way through the entire season. Of course, you guys voted for IMSA, and it has not disappointed so far. We're in qualifying at the moment with 3.5 minutes left to go. After this, we'll head in towards a 45-minute race with the fuel capacity shifted to encourage, or well, to force people into the pit lane. And we've seen oftentimes, Cam, that despite the fact it's only a 45-minute race, the strategy actually has quite an important factor to play in these races.
Oh, it certainly does. You obviously are aiming for 1 pit stop, and that means that 1 pit stop is very crucial indeed. You've got to get it right. You need to know when you're going to be coming into the pit lane and how you're going to time that. As you say, the fuel tank's slightly reduced, especially for the GT cars. They're halved, in fact. So that opens up the opportunity quite a lot. So around maybe 15-20 minutes to go in the race, something like that, we are going to be seeing lots of the drivers come in and see just how much fuel they're going to put in. Of course, if you stay out further, then your pit stop is going to be shorter, as you need to take less fuel towards the end. So that could always be a good factor, but it does depend where the traffic is on your in and out laps as well.
For sure. And well, again, it is circumstantial. As we say, there's 3 different classes taking so a very narrow track. I mean, it's a fairly long circuit, just over 3 miles in length. It's on the longer side of circuits. Of course, not quite as long as others, but it's up there. And of course, it's very, very narrow, and well, the track doesn't have any runoff whatsoever. Very much will be very willing to spit you out with just grass everywhere. So any mistake is going to cost you quite a bit of lap time, probably quite a lot of positions, maybe even your race, which means the prototypes are going to have to exercise just a little bit more caution in getting past the GTs today. And well, I think that can really spice things up. There's going to be a couple of different approaches. I think maybe the more conservative types that are like, okay, let's just take it easy. But then you've also got the more desperate types that are just going to send ones to the inside and force their way past the GTs. I mean, how are the prototypes going to be able to tackle the narrower conditions? It's surely going to be a lot harder to lap around here.
Yeah, for sure. I've had the pleasure of being a top-class driver around this track a few times. It's certainly a difficult one, especially through these fast sequences of corners, as we're seeing up the hill through turn 7, 8, and 9, in towards the fast turn 10 as well. Through that part of the track, the prototypes are so much faster than the GTs that the closing speed is incredible. But you have to almost back off early to then get the run a little bit later when the space opens up. It's very one line at that section of track, and even in the first sector as well. You have to really time your overtakes well here. It's not just about getting to the car as fast as possible and then diving past them. You've got to have a little bit of a conscious about where you're putting the car on the track.
Yeah, awareness, I think, is going to be the main skill, alongside consistency, of course, just getting to the end of this race is going to be a mammoth task in of itself. Only 45 minutes in length, of course. It's not the longest race in the world, more so a sprint, but that sprint dynamic sort of maybe adds to the pressure of the fact that you have to be consistent and you have to be aware, because you have to be, you have to push the limits of the car to be able to compete. It's not like a 6-hour race where you can really try and take it easy and ease the car into things. You have to hit the ground running straight from the green all the way to the checkered, and that pressure of having to go quickly surely is going to sort of play in the minds of some people and force some mistakes.
Yeah, the mistakes, I think, is the critical factor around this track, because, as you mentioned, the grass is everywhere. There's no tarmac runoffs. It hasn't been modernized in that way. You are going to get hit by some big penalties just by the fact of going off the track.
Of course, and with qualifying out of the way, we're going to take a look at the starting grid then as they line up for round number 8 of Friday night prime time. In terms of the GTDs, it's Loic Rabier that takes pole position. Just 1/10 back is Stolzenberg in second. Donovan and Thrain round off your second row, with Michael Goff the top 5. Joining him on the third row of the grid is going to be Jaroslav Sindela in P6 in that striking Lamborghini Huracan. Massing P7 with Hayward the fourth row. Walton and Moller round off your top 10, with Brent Cook and Thorsten Hofer 11th and 12th. Of course, only a couple more beyond that, just a couple more to round off the field. You've got Lorenzo Scanfella, Wayoris, and Felix Schuster to round off the 33 car field, of course, here today. Then we go up to the Dallara P217s. Marcus Nunez sets the pole time, and 6/10 back, a big substantial gap for Marcus Nunez in terms of his pole time. Max Jensen is going to join him on the front row. Michael Bell, Adam State 3 and 4, with Claudio Moldi your top 5. Then comes Patrick Hadrill in P number 6. Very, very tight beyond the fight for pole, of course. 6/10 between first and second, but then the rest of the field separated by only a second or so. Stephen Phillips and Key 7 and 8, with Van Steen and Austin Cobb 9 and 10 to round off a small 10-car field for the LMP2s. Then the big boys, the BMW M Hybrid V8, new to the service, but people are very quickly becoming familiarized with them. Luca Morelli and Emil Bernstorff 1 and 2, with Andreas Sandberg and Jan Korbs 3 and 4. Then comes Matthias Orhelja in P5. Benjamin Cora will join him for company alongside as they barrel their way towards turn number 1. A fairly short grid for the BMW M Hybrid V8, with only a couple more beyond this. Luke Mann, Sergey 7 and 8, with Scanfella and Felix Schuster. Those that didn't actually get a qualifying timing in qualifying will start towards the back end of the BMW field in 9th and 10th. A fairly close qualifying field then, Cam. Of course, they'll take to the formation lap before they get underway for the green flag from the pit lane, of course, behind the iRacing safety car. Talking about the GTs, very close in qualifying in them, those guys, and of course in the BMWs, but we saw in P2 6/10 between first and second. That's surely got to be good confidence for our pole sitter.
Absolutely, but when you only have a couple of laps in qualifying, sometimes a mistake here or there can affect that quite a lot. So I have to see how that translates to the race pace, of course. But for sure, that is going to be a big confidence boost, because coming into the first couple of laps of the race, you're going to have that edge, and you might be able to get a second or so ahead before you come around to the lap traffic for the first time, and that can always be a big important factor, because often the person who turns up to the traffic first will win out, as they will be able to decide a little bit more where they can go rather than picking up the scraps from the fights ahead of them. But yeah, for sure, this longer formation lap around here is going to be there to calm the nerves a little bit potentially, and just settle the drivers down into the 45-minute race.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going into a race, you have got those nerves built up, that adrenaline before you get going for the green flag. It is a very pressurizing environment, and particularly for those maybe in the mid-pack, even those on pole, you feel that pressure. The pole sitter, of course, because they're coming into this race with an expectation. They want to win. They've done the hard work in qualifying. Now comes the even harder bit of trying to hang on to that in the race. But universally, there's just so much on your shoulders, and to have that formation lap, to have something to occupy yourself, warm up the tires, warm up the brakes, settle into the car, one last feel around the circuit before you get going, because after that, Cam, it's just helmet on and absolutely go for it.
Yeah, flat out racing, especially for the prototypes around here, such a a fast track, so that obviously is exaggerated by these high downforce GTP cars that we have now in iRacing. Great to see them obviously getting involved with BMW, that is, with the M Hybrid V8. Very popular car as it is turning out to be, but with that extra speed, extra downforce that you get compared to the LMP2s, it just means your closing speed is that much extra, that much more compared to the GTD field. And of course, it's a little bit tricky, as we're mentioning, around this track. So I definitely think it's not just going to be about the fastest driver today, it's going to be about the smartest who's going to come out on top.
Well, you're saying who's poised for sort of, what attributes are going to take you to the checkered lead in the way? What are your predictions? I mean, we've only seen them in qualifying, we've only seen their lap times. You don't know much about these guys, but who's coming out on top? What do you reckon, Cam?
Well, Morelli, as you say, on that pole position, definitely has a lot of confidence coming into it, but is that going to turn into overconfidence potentially and start to push the limits around here? You can see even there just on the back straightaway just how narrow this track is and how easy it is to make a mistake, especially into a kinked braking zone there up towards the back straight turn 13 as well. So definitely a tricky track for these drivers, and it's not going to be the easiest one to come out on top. So having said that, I think Morelli, with that gap that he's had in qualifying, is definitely going to be taking that in and potentially taking the win today.
Oh, wow, fair play. That is Cameron Roger with his predictions. The iRacing safety car will peel over to the right-hand side before we get ourselves underway. A very long front stretch before you reach the timeline. Luca Morelli, Emil Bernstorff, your front row. We are go in Virginia, and it is the number 9 machine that leads fairly comfortably down and towards turn number 1. It's Anders Sandberg and Jan Korbs fighting over third place, jostling for the final place on the podium, in towards the horseshoe for the first time, an outside line, trying to hang it, too wide, 2 rows deep from multiple number of cars, and everyone just trying to filter their way through in these early stages. But you've really got to settle into rhythm, get single file fairly quickly, because you hit some S's and you hit some very narrow sections of circuit. The LMP2s get underway as well. It's still Marcus Nunez that leads from Mac Jensen, Adam State and Michael Bell, your top 4, but so far so good in terms of starts, Cam.
Indeed, I think that's actually State there having a good jump there. I think he gained 1 or 2 positions on that first lap as you get the GTD leaders now in towards turn 1 for the first time. Rabia there holds on to that lead with Stolzenberg in that second place, just in behind, with Donovan in third place as they come in towards turn 3 for the first time. Certainly a tricky section of corners, but it seems like there were pretty clean starts for all 3 classes, which is what we like to see.
Absolutely. I mean, it's optimal, really, to keep everyone in the loop, particularly around a circuit like the Virginia International Raceway, because, well, it's going to open the door for some carnage and chaos. I know you were watching some races earlier, Cam, in terms of the opening moments of the race. It can get fairly chaotic, but these guys, the top split guys, have kept it clean so far. And also note in the P2s, of course, granted, we've not quite, completed the first lap or anything like that. Max Jansen is keeping Marcus Nunez on his toes. He's, staying close, staying in the slipstream. I think that slipstream is going to be of vital importance for the number 6.
Oh, it certainly is. The slipstream will definitely pull you around a track like this with just the high-speed nature of it, the couple of long straights we have down the start-finish straight, and also that back straight all the way up the hill out of Oak Tree Corner as well. So certainly a lot of places around this track where you can use that, and even the sort of mini back straight in Sector 2 on this lap as well, as we're seeing Jensen there, Jansen I should say, coming towards turn 1, trying to close him up, as we're already getting one of the GTDs getting involved with the P2s, obviously not having the best start of the race there.
Yeah, unfortunately not. It's how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately, particularly at a circuit like this. It's something we are going to waffle on about and milk until it's absolutely bone dry as to how difficult this circuit is. And it's all about commitment. It's all about bravery. But also, you've got to go in with an air of caution, as we've said time and time again. But it's of even more importance now, because you've just got to get to the end of the race, particularly through this sector here, through sort of turns 7, 8 and 9, up the hills constantly, putting the car under load, and of course climbing uphill before you slam on the brakes. And there's a lot of that, Cam, isn't there, where you're demanding a lot of the car under brakes, and tyres don't like to be under load, let's put it that way. So as you're braking and turning, and the undulation, downhill braking zones for a lot of these corners, you're putting the tyres under a lot of load. It's very easy for the back end to spin.
It certainly is, and especially in a 45-minute race, it's not going to be a crucial factor as such, but it is going to be one that the drivers will have to think about, is how they manage the tyres. And as you say, around here, when you start putting too much load on the tyres, you maybe start overheating them, you start putting them into or sort of out of their working range, that can always be a bit of a tricky factor, because then the car starts to be harder to drive. So then you go slower, you slide more, then it sort of snowballs a little bit out of control. So having the ability to control that in the first few laps of the stints and get the tyres in a shape that you want them is going to be a very crucial factor.
Back to the front between Luca Morelli and Emil Bernstoff. The front two breakaway really ahead of Anders Sandberg. About 2 seconds clear so far in the early stages of this race, but visually you can see that's a fairly sizable gap. For Emil Bernstoff, I mean, he's definitely got the pace to keep on the toes of Morelli, but at a circuit like this, you're going to surely lose a lot of time by battling, and, you know, you run a very high risk of, you know, taking each other out if you do so. It doesn't take a lot for things to go drastically wrong. So in these early parts of the race, do you think that Luca Morelli and Emil Bernstoff just going to say, all right, mate, yeah, okay, we've got a bit of a lead. We've still got 40 minutes of this race left to go. Do you want to just knuckle down and get on with it?
Yeah, especially with how it's worked out in these first couple of laps. They've got that lead, as you say. I think they should work together to increase that gap and then start fighting a little bit later in the race, especially as you see, we've got a four-way battle for P3 as it stands. That is Anders Sandberg in that third place with Jan Korbs right in behind. If these guys start batting, that gap to the first two is just going to open up, and it's going to get to a point where it's going to be unassailable coming towards the midpoint of the race. So it is looking good, but there is actually Sandberg just potentially having to look in his mirrors at Korbs coming down in towards turn one.
Trying to have a bit of a look maybe, but in those prototypes you're very, you know, you're going in very quickly, but the brakes are also very, very good. It's difficult to send one to the inside, and I think, again, a lot of people just going in with a bit of caution. There's no need to rush things, and Sandberg has, well, he's got 3 cars all on the back of him. Dummy maybe, or ascend to the inside of turn 4A for a couple, well, for one of them, I think that was Aurela. Having a bit of a look back to the GTs, though. We got a bit of a fight materializing. A BMW going very slowly down the back straight. Probably one of the worst places you want to be going slowly, Cam.
Yeah, definitely having a bad exit there out of Oak Tree Corner. And that is, as you say, not the place that you want, because you lose the momentum all the way down the straight. And this is a battle for P6, I believe this is, coming towards the turn 13, 14 sequence of corners. And that means they're just going a little bit too wide. And that's going to allow that number 2 machine to come all the way back up. That is Stolzenberg, who was obviously P2 at one point in this race, and is now down into that 6th place. So definitely having some fights in that earlier point of the race as Donovan jumped up into that P2.
Yeah, a couple of people really hitting the ground running. Going to take another look as to how things happened. Following on with the number 2 BMW of Konstantin Stolzenberg. What's going to happen? The pink Audi just in behind him. Is it just running a little bit too wide? No, quite the opposite. Just the car looping round on him. I mean, obviously, through the double right-hand nature of that circuit, you're trying to carry a lot of speed through, and that is going to have a heavy lateral load on the car. So, I mean, I can sort of see it happening, but with TC and these GT cars, it's not often you see sort of mistakes like that, and it's one that he's really going to have to try and bounce back from.
Oh, has he gone back to battle for the lead? That is Burns. So they're trying to go around the outside of turn 2 and 3. Not necessarily the place you want to do it, but just trying to slow down your partner in front of Luca Morelli, who still leads the race. But there was obviously a bit of a battle into turn 1 that time around, as Morelli just holds on to it, coming out of the first sector of this lap. And Bernstoff is going to have to try once again. We did think maybe they're not going to battle. Maybe they're going to sort of work together to try and pull away. But I think they've got a big enough gap now. They don't need to worry about this. But Bernstoff almost pushing Morelli as we come up through turn 10 now.
Yeah, well, I don't care about their races. They're the ones that are risking it all. I only care about how hard they race, and, well, I am all here for it. If Emil Bernstoff wants to send some moves down the back straight now, not the best of exits for Luca Morelli. He ran a little bit wide off the exit there, which could hamper his run, but in the slipstream, has Bernstoff got the run? I don't think so. About 3.5 tenths back is not enough, particularly as you end towards the back end of this back straight. You know, you do the bit of a kink of turn 13, then straight on the heavy braking zone, and it's not particularly the place that you want to go for a move. And of course, now catching already the first wave of GTD traffic in these guys, this maybe could be Luca Morelli's break to be able to extend the gap, or it could go the other way. It could be Bernstoff's opportunity maybe to capitalize, but look at the very, very long train that they've got ahead of them.
And this is the tricky point of the track as well. This first few corners, as Bernstoff there tries to go in the middle, 3 wide in towards turn number 1. Just isn't going to have to... that isn't going to work out just for now. He's going to have to sit back and try and work this out. But look at these GT cars all through this sequence of corners, through turn 3, in towards turn 4 and 5. This is a tricky point of the race. You can easily have a crash here with this lap traffic, so you need to be a little bit cautious to not lose the race, but you could certainly sort of either gain or lose big time at this moment in the race.
Oh yeah, it is a turning point, particularly that first run through, because for all of these guys, for us in the commentary booth, we don't really know most of these people, and I'm sure it's going to be a similar situation for the actual drivers, and there's a heavy element of trust for both the prototypes and the GTs when it comes to lapping. So the first way through is sort of just testing the waters a little bit, just sticking your toes in, testing the temperature of the pool before you jump in, and you know, you've got to try and see who's their first stint of traffic and in towards the back end of the back straight, in towards turn 13 and 14. Luke Mann very close to the rear end of Arela, but he's also got Benjamin Cora just in behind as well. 3 cars battling their way through traffic, all battling for position. I would not want to be a GT in that situation, Cam.
Yeah, certainly would, and although, as you see, it's just turned into a two-way battle. As who was that behind Cora? He just lost that that time, wasn't able to go through into the final corner, and that just shows you how many car lengths. As back to the front, Morelli loses the lead. Bernstoff goes towards the front. That has been coming for a couple of laps, and now we need to see if Emil Bernstoff can start to pull away a little bit. Definitely showing some more pace. Morelli had the pace in the qualifying, but Bernstoff is coming back with the race pace and consistency.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't quite see as to how it happened. We're going to take another look down the very, very long pit straight. Emil Bernstoff having a look to the inside very late on the brakes. You can see Luca Morelli already trying to sort of discourage him by moving slightly under the under braking, sort of aiming himself towards the apex, but Bernstoff was not having any of that, and now takes charge of this race, gets himself in the lead. But now what he's saying, he's making a statement, isn't he, Cam, to Morelli, to say, okay, I'm quicker, so I'm surely going to be the one to pull away. And now he has to live on that expectation. He has to provide and live up to that. Otherwise, he's very susceptible to a counterattack from Luca Morelli, who, the pole sitter, very, very quick in qualifying. He's not going to sit around and let Bernstoff get away, is he?
He's certainly not, and the slipstream will definitely pull him back into play as well, especially as the 2 long straights of the one we just saw coming up the back straight, and then there's just a couple more corners before you get the slipstream again coming towards turn number 1. So certainly an opportunity, but Bernstoff does look like he pulled a car length or so, at least in that final part of the lap, but it's not going to be easy around here. 34 minutes to go in this race, so still obviously, as I mentioned, a pit stop to come at some point, but Bernstoff definitely looking quite strong at this point.
Yeah, for sure. He's not doing too bad at all. And looking back in the pack again, this is that fight we were talking about for the midfield. And a lot of the BMWs actually are breaking into their own little packs, aren't they? I mean, we've got Anders Sandberg here in P4. Jan Korbs was able to get through and sort of sail off into the distance. Maybe a bit of a move from Orela, trying to get underneath him through turn 4A and 4B. Now through the winders, the first set of S's, before you then sort of begin the climb through the very tricky S's of turn 7, 8 and 9 into the heavy braking zone, but nothing materializing for the number 14 on this particular occasion. But again, there's no need to take risks. I don't think we're going to see any drastic sends or silly dives, at least not until after the pit stops. Well, I don't know. What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I do think we're going to see a few cheeky overtakes, though. Whether you go, absolutely sending absolutely everything you've got at this point in the race, probably not. But definitely an overtake is going to be possible. If you can do that, especially for Luke Mann there, wanting to get himself up in towards the top 5. As also looking at P6, down in the GTD battle as well. He's got Sindler there, who is up into that 5th place. He was involved in that battle a little bit earlier on. We saw with Massing getting past on the back straight, but also Stolzenberg has got through as well. So Sindler dropping down those 2 places in the last couple of laps. Now there's a whole train of cars behind who want to get up inside that top 5, starting with Nikolai Train just behind.
Well, we'll have to wait and see again. Still 32 minutes of this race left to go. Still the pit stops and things to work their way through also. But Sindelar is under a world of pressure, trying to hang on to 5th place in class, as you were saying, and has got, well, 1 car behind him, and not too far back is Michael Goff as well. Only about 1.3 seconds or so at the last split of this race. And while the LMP2 is now working their way through the field, very early are some of these lap times, and actually Jaroslav Sindler is under a bit of pressure. The Audi of Nikolai Train is having a bit of a look to the right hand side in towards turn number 1, and that should be a fairly easy affair. Goes in a bit too deep, maybe Sindler can tuck back underneath, but not going to be the case as a P2 has found its way on his inside. Easily done. Easy up the inside for Nikolai Train, and Yaroslav Sindelar didn't really have much of a defense for that one. He wasn't too interested in sort of covering off the inside or anything.
Yeah, now that's 3 places lost in as many laps from what I can count. So definitely going backwards a little bit. As talking of backwards, into the wall is Stephen Walton there, 10th place as it stands, and is just losing some time. I wonder if there was a bit of contact there, because that was an interesting place. It's very far down the track from turn 3, already towards the braking zone of turn 4A. Definitely an interesting place to have a spin there, but losing quite a bit of time.
Going to take another look as to how it happened, thankfully, to iRacing with the instant replays, because there's a lot we need to catch up on, and a little bit wide, just understeering a little bit. Yeah, Grass, you are a passenger. Stephen Walton tapping the barrier once, sent the car on a spiral, and then sent him into the other tyre barrier. That BMW, it's seen better days, but he seems to be carrying on fairly all right. It wasn't exactly a high-speed shunt, but it was a very scary one at that. And the first round of pit stops, Luke Mann into the pit lane, very, very early. 30 minutes still left to go. It's a strategy that we've talked about, but not really seen executed.
Yeah, so there's obviously 2 ways of doing it. You roughly, out of the 45 minutes, you roughly go for 30 minutes and then pit for the final 15 minutes towards the end of the race. Or, in theory, you could do it in reverse, where you start with a full tank, you go 15 minutes, and then you top up your tank and then go a full tank again to the end. But on average, you have more fuel in the car than the way that you're going to see most people do it. So it's not always the best strategy, but let's see if Luke Mann can work that one out. I wonder if maybe there was any damage there. Didn't really see, though. Actually, no, it was only 12 seconds in the pit stop, so probably not. So that, I think, is strategy, just trying the ultimate strategy, trying to make something work and get himself up into that top 5 at the end. But we won't know for quite a while until everyone else makes their pit stops.
Yeah, that's the thing about early strategies. It's like, okay, is this going to work? We'll have to wait and find out. Stephen Walton, the BMW that we just saw in a bit of a shunt a couple of moments ago, into the pit lane for a fairly long time, does see himself with a bit of damage that is going to take a while to prepare. Back to the live action, though, and back to the mid-fight for the BMWs. It's Sergei Soldatov, the 25 machine, in a fight with Lorenzo Scanfurla, who's going very, very wide, doing a bit of drifting, doing a bit of rallycross here at the Virginia International Raceway, and is just about going to rejoin the circuit. So there's worse ways that could have gone, but there's definitely better ones, and a bit too much speed, maybe a bit of outwash from the car in front. These BMWs got a lot of downforce, but yeah, just a clumsy mistake, and one that's going to cost him not finishing last in that field so far.
Easy mistake to do as Stolzenberg gets up into 3rd place, so making a bit of recovery from dropping down to 6th. But certainly, yeah, this track, as we mentioned, it has all this grass. There's none of this modern tarmac runoff. And it's sort of a good and a bad thing in some ways, because you are sort of punished if you go off, but also you sort of can't get back on the track that quickly, so it's a little bit awkward. So yeah, definitely an interesting one, as Van Steen there just goes straight on. Oh, huge contact for Nicholas Van Steen. Bounces almost back onto the track with how much force he went into that tyre barrier.
Yeah, that is one of the fairly heftier shunts that we've come to experience, but we had a fairly clean start. Now towards the mid portion of the race, people seem to have their bottle lid open with some of the bottles that we're seeing from some of these cars. Just, again, a small mistake, but here at the VIR, it's a very drastic one. You know, small mistake, big consequences. Jan Korb's into the pit lane, also in the BMW M Hybrid V8 class. He's also joining Luke Mann in terms of an early strategy. Slightly later, and oh my word, this is getting fairly busy. Stephen Phillips, P6 in the P2s, trying to negotiate some of the GTD traffic. However, he's got to look out for Glenn Andre Key, and also Patrick Hildrill just in behind him. Also Austin Cobb as well. The fight for the final places in the P2s, separated by some of the GTs, emerging side by side a couple of the cars, and it shows how quickly things can turn on their head. Getting squeezed, oh my word, onto the grass as they drag race their way down the back straight in the slipstream as well. Stephen Phillips might be able to lose a place. Also using the side draft just a little bit is the Andre Key, now going for another move up into P6. Then Andre Key in towards turn 13, 14 and 15, this little complex, able to get past 2 cars. That's definitely not too shabby.
Yeah, nice little battle then. The LMP2's a little bit further down towards the back of the pack, but still giving it large and making themselves some entertainment in this race, which is great to see. A four-way battle, even though it is for the final 4 places in the LMP2 category, with Van Steen being the one LMP2 DNF as it stands. But yeah, certainly key with a very bold move there coming towards turn 13. Not the easiest one to do, but definitely had the ambition to do so, and sometimes taking the risks does help us. Bernstoff, interestingly, comes in a little bit earlier than we may have been expecting and gives the lead back to Morelli.
Yeah, I mean, this is now crunch time, really, for Luca Morelli. Also, Anders Sandberg into the pit lane as well. It seems fairly unanimous, then, that the early pit stop is the way to go. Not certainly a strategy I was anticipating. I don't know. I mean, I guess you're almost in the same amount of darkness as I am with this, Cam. But what's different about Virginia than any other circuit that we've had so far this season that warrants an early stop? Is it because you're batting your way through traffic more often, or is it just a better strategy course? I honestly, I don't know.
I reckon it's just strategy. To be honest, with the traffic management is what I meant to say. Because if you are coming up to another train of cars, surely it would be better to pit and then not be in that train of cars and have your competitors do that and lose a little bit of time, maybe. That's the only thing I can really think about that. Having said that, Morelli doesn't seem to be in too much heavy traffic, really. And at the end of the day, all the cars need to go through the traffic at some point. So definitely it's an interesting one. As you said, we were expecting everyone to go a bit later, but that's really the only thing I can think about is just a bit of traffic management.
Yeah, I mean, Luca Morelli's got a couple of stragglers in terms of GTs, but nothing major. Nothing really that says, all right, no, I want to get out of that. I mean, every little helps. Each car you get past, chances are you are going to lose a little bit of time unless you're Luca Morelli and catch them down the pit straight, which is perfect timing, really. That is, the perfect situation for both the prototype and the GT. The GT have to constantly look in their mirrors, hit their marks, make sure they haven't got a prototype darting their way to the inside of them, but also the prototypes have to use their experience, their wits about them. There is Massing off at turn number 1, probably a little bit too deep on the brakes, took a trip to the grass, now rejoining the circuit. Not the first time we've seen a couple of mistakes, but it seems that each corner, it's not necessarily just one outlier of a corner that's causing these mistakes. It's almost every point on the circuit. Almost every time we see a mistake, it's a different point on the circuit, Cam. I think that speaks volumes about how tricky this circuit really is.
Yeah, every corner is tricky, to be fair. It's very easy just to put a wheel off onto the grass and just spun around either way, especially the likes of turn 1 there. It's so easy to brake late, or too late, I should say. It's a very narrow track. You don't have much room for going off, and as you mentioned, with all the grass, if you do go off, it just pulls the car and you can't have the extra grip to then turn back onto the track. Let's see Massing here coming towards turn 1. Is this going to be just braking a little bit too late? The track sort of goes down a little bit and then you want to brake just as it comes back up, but yeah, too late, going way off there. I mean, that was, quite a bit too late. That was not just a little misjudgment.
Yeah, wrong kind of BMW, to be honest. That's the GT that he's in, not the M Hybrid V8. There is Calvert rejoining the circuit after coming into the pit lane. He rejoins in what is now P9 in his class. Luke Mann, though, climbing his way back up the timing tower as everyone else comes their way down the pit lane. So we might see him back into fruition in terms of some pit stops. Maybe that very early stop was beneficial, but again, only time will tell. Just under halfway, well, pretty much bang on in terms of the halfway mark of this race. 23 minutes and 8 seconds left to go, and it is Luca Morelli that leads the way from Matthias Aurelia and Sergei Soldatov. Your top 3, however, all of them are yet to come into the pit lane. A very split strategy then. I mean, we've got one half of the BMWs decided, okay, we're going to come in the first half. Then you've got sort of the top 3 that are just like, no, we're going to stick it out. We're going to go quite long. Now Luca Morelli's got some clear air. He's able to put in some pretty decent lap times, about a couple of seconds off his best lap time overall in this session, but still putting in some fairly competitive lap times, relative to the rest of the field. Now it's time to use that clear air while he's still got some fuel left in the tank and, run with it, try and extend the gap versus his main rival of Emil Bernstoff, and just use the track that he's got to put in those lap times.
And it's not the biggest difference, but he's also on less fuel, with Bernstoff obviously topping up at his pit stop as well. So this is definitely a point of potential advantage for Morelli, but on the previous laps at least, I mean, they were separated by less than a tenth of a second. So it's certainly very close between those two drivers either way. And of course, traffic can very easily change the course of this race, as Bernstorff is still in 4th place despite making a pit stop, as doing as well. Solotov there also just inside that traffic in that number 25 car ahead of him. So definitely a very close and important battle here for Bernstorff to try and not get held up too much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's come into the pits early now. He's got a job on his hand. And it's not just a case of getting stuck in traffic where the GTs are sort of 10 seconds a lap slower. No, it's someone who's in the same class as Ulo Grabia into the pit lane from the lead, I believe, of the GTDs. Nikolai Train is going to take the lead of this race provisionally while everyone else funnels their way down the pit lane. But yeah, it is crunch time for Bernstorff. He's got to get past a car that it's in the same class. Granted, he's maybe slightly quicker than Soldatov, but oh well, that's going to be an easy affair. To the inside now of turn 4A, the Audi just getting in the way a little bit, allowed Bernstorff easy passage through, and I think that's the best scenario that he could have asked for. Waited back just a little bit in anticipation of something going wrong between his fellow prototype and of course the Audi GTD. You know, just sat back, was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to pounce on this, and did exactly that into 4A. Now he's got a bit of clear air. Up to Aurelia is, well, a good 20 seconds, so he's got to push. He's got to put those lap times in now and make the most of that early pit stop strategy.
Yeah, definitely needs to be making up some time to be sure that he's going to come back out in the lead as he was before. But it's always good to see split strategies, though, because then you don't know what's going to happen until the final sort of 10, 15 minutes of this race. So we are expecting Morelli to be going another few laps at least before making the pit stop. Although, having said that, everything that we've predicted so far has gone a little bit off as well. It's certainly a good track for this car, this BMW especially, just opening up that strategy window even more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, still the BMW is a little bit of an unknown. I mean, it's only been on the service for a few months, which relative to some other cars that have been on here since the start of iRacing, which is almost as old as me, a good 14 years, I think, is iRacing.
Yeah.
I know, 13 and a half now. No, but yeah, it's getting old. It's getting a bit old. I know Cam's hating me for that one. But yeah, no, it's a fairly new car. I mean, we've seen it for a few months. We've seen it in multiple events. You know, the VCO Pro Sim, the Daytona 24. But still, a lot of drivers are getting familiar with it, particularly in these sprint formats, because the only time we've seen it on the big stage is sort of in endurance style formats, longer than 45 minutes. So yeah, the quick fire strategy is something that drivers are still getting used to. But it's good that we're seeing this progression from where we first saw it in VSO Pro Sim Infinity to now. There's a big improvement in driving standards in that BMW.
Yeah, and also Ivor as well. It was a 12 hours of Daytona they did as well. Literally just a couple of weeks after the car got released, and that was certainly a little bit of carnage as well. Purely because, as you say, the car's just released. Everyone is trying to work out how to drive the car, how to set it up, what it likes, and that is very difficult. And that's why a series like this, the IMSA iRacing series, is really good, because it's a short enough race that you don't have to sort of invest too much time with it as such, but it's still a very solid race for you to learn the car and know exactly what you can do in the future. And Stolzenberg, coming back to the GTD battle, has got himself back into 3rd place that we saw a little bit earlier on in this battle with Donovan. And this is certainly going to turn into a bit of a spicy one with Stolzenberg coming back through the field.
Yeah, he's going to want to try and pounce on that very pink Audi. Makes me think, of course, of Arnage competition. He's not part of Arnage, but yeah, it's very pink. Let's say that much. And Jay Donovan is trying to hang on to 2nd place. I think Loic Rabia is running off with this race. 6 seconds clear after the pit stops. He's doing a phenomenal job. No disrespect to him at all, but in one of the closest pole gaps between P1 and P2, it's one of the biggest runaways of the 3 classes. I think, again, that just shows that qualifying means absolutely diddly squat when it comes to the race.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's always ironic when you see that, but I definitely think that is a virtue of the qualifying formats that we have in pretty much all of these public iRacing races, where you just get those 2 consecutive laps and you don't really have any leeway. You've got to be on it, and sometimes that first lap is actually the faster one. You can't, just the way that the tires work and the heat and everything, you can't actually go faster on the second lap sometimes. So because of that, you have to make that first lap count, and there's a lot of pressure on it, and you only get that one chance, that one run. So I definitely think that spices up the qualifying a bit and allows the drivers who are better in the race to really shine through and show that it's not just about qualifying.
I mean, even for the Daytona 24, they had that same format of just 2 laps, go for it, because, yeah, I think it's a great format. I mean, you use the first one as a banker, and if you mess it up, then all the pressure's on that second lap to try and put a good lap in. I myself love a bit of the IRO4s, and you really have to use the first lap to warm up the tyres, to warm up the brakes, and I'm pretty sure that's similar in pretty much any series that you go to. Because yeah, the qualifying just doesn't allow you to, you know, do extensive runs to warm up the tyres to a full amount. You just have to get on with it and put the lap in when it counts. But yeah, as you say, with any race, it's the race where the sort of quote unquote points are scored, where the results matter as such. And there's a lot more you can do in terms of lap times with the race than there is in qualifying. But yeah, iRacing with all the official series really hits the format with the nail on the head. Pretty much 9 times out of 10. It's awesome that there's so many official series, such a wide variety of cars and tracks and different formats to sort of sink your teeth into. Open setups, fixed setups, sprints, endurances, etc., etc. There's such a wide community as well that iRacing, yeah, really does open itself up to be, at least in my opinion, one of the best sims for multiplayer racing, and that is attributed, of course, to its official sort of system of, you know, with iRacing, you're in it because you care about racing, because you want to race clean, and because you want to have a good race. Otherwise, you wouldn't, you know, fork out for the sim. You wouldn't put all the time and effort and money into it if you weren't serious about it. And when you get that, you get a lot of clean respect for racing, like we're seeing today. Because, well, for the Virginia International Raceway, for 3 classes, for multi-class racing, full stop, they've been they've been on their best behaviour.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest points as well are the fact you have the rating system, and then you have the splits system that goes with that. So you're always in a race of similar ability drivers, and of course that makes the racing that little bit more equal, a little bit more fair, and you're always battling people in a similar ability to you. So you're not either being held up or you're not just running away with it sometimes, which is good to see. I think there was 5 splits in this time slot as well, so definitely loads of participation coming into it just for a pretty you know, normal series as well, which is good to see just on a nice Friday night, as Stotzenberg there just making a couple of mistakes on that the previous corners, as we've had some issues here. Maudi is slowed down. One of the GTPs there, Kaura, has had a bit of an issue from that 8th place as it stands. I wonder if they had some contact there in turn 13 and 14.
Well, we'll maybe have to take another look at that. Is Moller, Henrik Steen Moller, having a bit of an off through Oak Tree, I believe, before you head down the back straight. That is unfortunate. It's one that we saw a little bit earlier on. Was it with Stolzenberg who looped it around here? Luca and Morelli finally into the pit lane with 14 minutes left to go. This is the strategy that we were expecting. Over the course of the 45-minute race, he's going to be averaging a lot less in terms of fuel, and the race is on. We're watching now Emil Bernsdorf and Luca Morelli in the bottom right of your screen. It's a race against time between the pair of them. I think the number 5 might just have it.
Yeah, I think Bernsdorf has got this quite nicely. He made some good pace on the last couple of laps. I don't know if it's because of traffic, but Morelli had a couple of laps that are about 2 seconds a lap slower in the recent ones, and that is certainly giving Bernsdorf a nice lead coming into the final 13 minutes of the race, and that is going to be a difficult one to overcome for the likes of Morelli. But of course, there's still other drivers out there who still need to pit and still need to do their thing. So Ojuela there towards the front is still going to be somewhat in with a shout of a top position, but not for the race lead when it all works out.
Emil Bernsdorf has really sort of set the time and tower alight with his pace. I mean, he's quickest of the bunch by a couple of tenths. His quickest lap time of 1:31.0. The closest to it is Luca Morelli with a 31.192. So, I mean, about 1/10 difference in terms of their personal bests, but the difference is Emil Bernsdorf has put those lap times in lap after lap after lap after lap, pretty much since as soon as he got past Luca Morelli. Bit of a replay. We're going to take a look as to what happened to Claudio Maldi at the end of the back straight into turns 13 and 14. Easily done because, you know, you're at the top speed. Oh no, is it a dodgy rejoin, or is it just a case of no? I think he's all good. No, it was just a solo spin. There was another spin for that GTP. which obviously prompted the assumption there was contact, but there wasn't. And to be honest, Cam, I'm surprised we haven't seen that same mistake more often into turn 13 and 14, because you're off the back of the back straight, you're at the top end of the rev range and the top end of the, the speed range for these cars, and then you have to turn into a kink and brake at the same time. You're put in the rear of the car, a very precarious situation, and it's easy to loop around. We're going to ride on board with Calra as well into the left of 13 and nearly hitting into the side. Ooh. And then I think just got distracted, so eager to avoid the P2 on the grass that he, I guess, maybe just got too caught up on the curb and spun the car around. These prototypes are very sensitive to that, so I mean, fair enough, it's easily done.
Yeah, I think just taking a bit too much curb on the inside, but that's a natural reaction. You see the car coming towards you from your left, so your instinct is to turn that little bit more to the right. And I think just, took a little bit too much curb, which is a bit unfortunate for Caro there. Drops down to 8th place in class. And not the ideal situation, because losing a bit of time from that. As we see Bernstoff there in the lead of the race now that the pit stops from ahead have sort of been sorted out, as there is how Moller went off. Is that Bernstoff that actually go up the inside? Moller went onto the grass and managed to spin onto sort of out of the track and not collect anyone sort of being sat the wrong way, facing the wrong way on track.
Fortunately, I mean, he easily could have done so. Speaking of Stolzenberg, unfortunately, the battle between him and Jay Donovan has grown to the reaches of about 3.5 seconds. So Stolzenberg is going to have his wits about him to try and re-close that gap. And to be fair, that is the theme universally throughout the entire field. No one's really within a second. I mean, you've got Benjamin Caro and Lorenzo Scanfurla, who are quite close together, only a couple of tenths between them. Actually, no, read that wrong, unfortunately. So that's not the case. You've got Sandberg and Orela that are quite close as well. A couple of battles between GTD, but no lead or podium fights particularly close together. I mean, Bernstoff and Corbs 4.5 seconds, Nunez and Slate 4.7 seconds, then Rabier and Donovan about 5.2 seconds clear. Our leaders have really checked out in this race.
Yeah, they certainly have, and I think the main reason for that is, well, two reasons really. One is the difficulty of the track, so that means that mistakes, and when I mean mistakes, I mean like little ones, just missing an apex here and then, losing a few tenths is a lot more common, so just naturally the gap's spread out. But also with the traffic, the way the traffic works, it really splits up the battles, just like you're seeing there with the two GTPs in between the Audi. One of them couldn't get past, has to sit behind for 3-4 corners, and they just lose a couple of seconds, and then that just stretches out these battles as well. As we've had Soldatov there go off in towards turn 1, or at least being slow on the exit, and up towards turn 3. Seems to be going back, but maybe, just hitting the grass or going a little bit too fast into turn 1.
Yeah, again, easily done. Small mistakes like that add up big time over the course of the race, and it's those that are the best that sort of mitigate those mistakes. Sergey Soldatov in towards turn number 1, it's a little bit too late, overshot it a bit, just way too in deep. You even saw in a desperate attempt to make up for his mistake, he knew immediately that he'd made it and just tried to aim himself for the apex of turn 1. But unfortunately, it was that point of no return. He just had to brake as hard as he could and hope the car wasn't going to go onto the grass. Unfortunately, as soon as just a little bit of your tyre touches the grass in iRacing, you become a passenger. And, it takes a lot of car control to be careful. A bit of a fight here between Claudio Maldi and Stephen Phillips for P6 now in the LMP2's. Defensive goes Maldi, and now to the outside goes Phillips in towards turn number 1. Is Phillips going to try and sail his way the long way around to turn number 1 here at the Horseshoe? Not quite. He is going to try and get the up and under, though. Claudio Maldi hangs on for now, but with 8 minutes left to go in this 45-minute race, only about 5.5, 6 laps left to go according to our timing sheets. The time is not on the side of Stephen Phillips. He has to get this move done fairly quickly, particularly at a circuit where overtaking opportunities are few and far between.
Yeah, maybe he needs to use the traffic here, actually coming up towards hill, getting a bit of a run. You don't always see a move here up towards sort of turn 7-8 region of the track. Just has to sit behind, of course, with it being so one line up towards turns 9 in towards the fast left here of turn 10. Just a little dab of the brakes and up towards the famous Oak Tree corner as well. This is where you want to get the exit. This is where you want to get the run up towards the back straight and use the slipstream to your advantage.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It doesn't seem to be the best of exits for Phillips, and that could be the saving grace for Claudio Maldi in front of him. A long back straight, but not a powerful enough slipstream for the number 16 to really capitalise. He's going to have to recompose himself and bounce back. Still another Audi just in front of him there to maybe use to his advantage and work a way through, but that's the thing, you've got to really scout your opponent, haven't you, Cam? I mean, Stephen Phillips presumably has been behind Maldi for quite some time in this race. He knows where he can gain time, where he's quicker, where he can manipulate his opponent. That might be actually out of the final corner, pulling to the left-hand side. Stephen Phillips, a drag race now down the pit straight, pulling back into the slipstream, hit a brick wall of air, now has the outside line once again for turn number 1. Claudio Maldi sent in deep. Has he got it stopped, or is Stephen Phillips going to look to the inside? He's going to meet the rear end of the BMW side by side nearly. Oh, it's teasing Phillips, isn't it? He's getting so close to having an inkling of looking to the inside, but each and every time Maldi just has enough to cover it off.
Made a little mistake there through turn 3, a little bit wide, had to cover off, defend a little bit in towards turn 4A, but Phillips there not able to get past. Now you say the GTP behind might just get involved in this battle, get in between them as we come up the hill through the S's, which is not the nicest place to be necessarily for the sort of a battling car. You don't want to get a bit of traffic in between you, but that's where they're going to have to be for the next couple of corners. Phillips might need to just stay very close here if Maldi gets a bit of a bad run though out of Oak Tree, but now that definitely the gap has opened up a little bit too much with that traffic coming through. But that is the way the multi-class racing goes sometimes. It definitely goes for you and then goes against you at other points of the race. But Phillips now needs to try and get that extra few car lengths back to have a bit of a run in the final few laps.
Yeah, that is a given in of itself. A little bit further up, the fight potentially for P3, actually side by side, Michael Bell able to hang on in the balance ahead of Adam State for now. But how is that going to chop and change in the final moments of this race? The number 11 machine is hanging on, but a very crucial position in the P2 field with a runaway really for Marcus Nunez and Max Janssen. This could be the only podium place they could be fighting for. Michael Bell side by side as they run up the hill through 7, 8 and 9. Oh my word, yeah, of course, car off. He rejoins just in front. Oh my word, Adam State rejoins the circuit. He is going to have his heart in his mouth. What a catch that is. Probably a pretty hefty slowdown coming his way as well. But you could see that coming from a mile away.
Yeah, Adam State there really taking some risks to go side by side in that sequence of corners. It's so fast, it's so flowing, but it's one line. And definitely turn 7, turn 8 is not where you want to be making an overtake. State there just had to get out of that one. Now up the inside of turn 13, thinking about it, looking towards the apex, but not quite close enough. And as I say, to get on the podium, this is certainly an important position, but you got to be doing it at the right points of the track. And I think what he tried a bit earlier on this lap was not necessarily the place you want to make an overtake.
Bit of a wake-up call for Adam State to say, no, I mean, you're desperate for that podium, granted, but you cannot be chucking in silly moves like that one. Flash of the headlights, of course, naturally, for Michael Bell, just to tell the Porsche to get out of his way. He's got Adam State just in behind. He doesn't want to risk slowing himself down and re-inviting the number 7 back through with just a couple of laps left. There is Randall Hayward having a bit of an off through turn number 3, which, of course, is not optimal for him. But we cut back to this fight for the podium, and now it's crunch time for Michael Bell. He's really slidey. Oh, not the best run at all through the S's. That is going to invite Adam State to be side-by-side deja vu as they were last lap. Adam State has got a bit of a nose ahead. Is he going to go off the circuit? Michael Bell tucks back in, and back onto the podium is Adam State. It went a lot better through turn 7, 8 and 9 this time around than it did last lap. He played that to perfection, capitalized on the small mistake of Michael Bell, who's surely going to be kicking himself to lose that place with only a couple laps left.
Yeah, I think that's the only in-class overtake we're going to see at that point of the track, to be honest. Is not the half of the track where you really see overtakes, but State managing to make it work finally on that second attempt. And of course, little mistakes here and there from Bell, certainly helping that one as Bell there. Just covered off there, GTP to not dive it down the inside. He knows he's still got a couple of laps, and Bell might be able to come back there at State for the final podium place.
Well, we are on to lap 27 of 30, according to the timing sheet. Now on to 28, so 3 laps left to go in this race, 2 minutes and 40 seconds left. It is going to be very, very close at the line in terms of their lap times and whether they get an extra lap or not, etc., etc. Dumbing into the inside, Michael Bell trying to follow the BMW through and overtaking the BMW, actually. Is probably actually slowing himself down more than anything and couldn't use the BMW more as sort of I don't know, as just to latch onto the back of him and use him as the wedge to force the gap open with Adam State and then find the way through, but instead fought with him and lost a couple of car lengths to the number 7 machine of Adam State. And well, with this little time left to go, it's looking increasingly less and less likely with small mistakes like that for Michael Bell that he could get himself back onto the podium. A similar battle we're seeing a little bit further down the fight for P6, Claudio Maldi versus Stephen Phillips. It's still Maldi that leads Phillips as we saw it a couple of laps ago.
Very nice battle as it has been, but just a couple of laps to go. And that is the number 11 car, Michael Bell. That is not going to be what he wants if he wants to get back on the podium. And another car off there. I wonder if there was a bit of contact between the two. Up towards Oak Tree, that's Sandberg there. 5th place as it stands, and possibly with some damage coming towards the final 2 laps.
I want to take another look at that. Was it Sandberg that was the GTP that he was with when he was when he was fighting with Adam State? Because there might have been some contact. I don't know. Michael Bell, it's all sort of unraveled in these last dying moments, and Anders Sandberg thrown his race up in the air. At the moment P5, but he might be able to tank it on to the end of this race. He might be forced to come into the pit lane. It remains to be seen, but that is an unfortunate way to end this race. But again, motor racing, VIR, it's indiscriminate. It will bite at any point. And unfortunately for Sandberg and unfortunately for Bell, it was at this point. Going to take a look as to how it happened. A replay heading up the hill. Sandberg, I mean, just what happened, Cam?
That is crashing out of sympathy, I guess. Bell was already spinning up ahead. Sandberg obviously was looking at that, was being potentially a little bit distracted at that point of the track, and spun himself. Yeah, I don't know if target fixation is the right word for that, but definitely distraction coming out of turn 10. It's a very narrow point of the track, and you sort of turn in without thinking about it. Bell there just going in way too fast compared to State ahead of him, so he's actually looking good to potentially come back, but just misjudged the braking there completely as State was obviously slowing down for the GTDs ahead.
Yeah, and now on to the final lap. The white flag is going to be waved. Emil Bernstoff actually is going to see it first. We're going to see him cross the line. He takes the checkered here for round number 8 of Friday Night Primetime in Virginia. What a race it was for the number 5 machine. He'll be joined by Jan Korbs just in behind. A couple of seconds, actually, Jan Korbs able to get second place on the podium. Luca Morelli just in behind that to complete the podium. The pole sitter is not going to be happy with the result of this race. Jan Korbs, though, out of nowhere. Marcus Nunez takes the victory for the Dallara P217s. A dominant pole to flag victory for the number 1 machine. And now we wait. Max Jensen joins him second place on the podium. And it is going to be Adam State that takes the final step after, well, a spin for Michael Bell in the dying moments. Loic Rabier, though, seems perfectly poised to take victory for the GTDs, and 3 very deserved, 3 fairly dominant victories as well across our 3 classes.
And it looks like he's had the amazing feature that we see sometimes in multi-class where he was not quite lapped by the leader, so he's going to do a lap more than all of his competitors, and is on paper going to win the race by a full lap, which is just the way it works in multi-class racing sometimes. But it seems that everyone else behind is +1 lap, so they must have been so Donovan must have been just overtaken by Bernstoff coming towards the line, with Rabier there getting to do a lap of honour effectively to take home the victory, which is always a nice one, but certainly a very controlled drive and a very well-deserved victory.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was no one really else in contention for the lead in the GTDs. Same too for the P217s. Marcus Nunez able to take pole by a good 0.6 of a second ahead of the man that joined him on the front row, but all eyes on Loic Rabier. Victory lap of honour for the number 3 machine, who will see the checker flag first for the GTDs in his Audi R8 machine here at the Virginia International Raceway. For the GTDs, it's a victory for Loic Rabier. And what a victory it was after 45 minutes of racing. Here come your results. 29 laps of racing action, and it was Emil Bernstoff that took the checkered flag. The number 5 machine ahead of Jan Korbs and Luca Morelli on the podium. Arela and Sandberg, your top 5 were Luke Mann and Sergei Soltov, P6 and P7, with Benjamin Cowra, P8. Lorenzo Scanfella and Felix Schuster, your top 10, and rounding off the field for the BMWs, the fast lap of a 1:31.0 for Emil Bernstoff. Then comes the Dallara P217s, the number 1 machine, Marcus Nunez. Well, he didn't look backwards after the green flag. 10.6 seconds clear of Max Jensen, who will join him a second place on the podium. Adam Stay able to hang on in the balance versus Michael Bell, 3 and 4 for those two respectively. Glenn Andre Key, your top 5, with Claudio Maldi able to hang on from Stephen Phillips, just in behind in P7. Then comes Patrick Hidril in P8, Austin Cobb and Nicholas Van Steenie, your top 10, and rounding off the field inside those Dallara P217s. And finally, the GTDs, the IMSA 23s, the number 3 machine of Loic Rabia, the Audi R8, technically 1 lap clear of the rest of the field. It speaks volumes about their race. Jay Donovan and Konstantin Stolzenberg, your podium, with Nikolai Train and Michael Goff, 4 and 5. Then comes Jaroslav Sindela, P6. Guerlain Massing, we saw have a couple of spins throughout the race. The Frenchman, P7. Brent Cook, Weyers, and Hoffer, the top 10, with a very extensive grid in the GTDs. We didn't quite manage to see all of them through the entirety of the race, but behind them is Hayward, Steen Moller, and Stephen Walton just in behind to round off the GTD class here for the Virginia International Raceway. And well, Cam, well, that does round off our racing action. That was an interesting race. And I think, in all fairness, we've probably got the calmest rendition of that race that we possibly could have gotten.
Yeah, there wasn't many DNFs and some great battles, which is great to see, and some drivers using the traffic to their advantage, and it worked out pretty well actually. And even the little spins that we did see weren't actually too bad. So yeah, definitely very happy with how that race went here at VIR, and definitely showing us why it was on the schedule, of course, after being newly renovated on the iRacing surface as well. So yeah, really looking forward to how the rest of this season is going to shape up, because if they can do it there, then they can do it at any of these tracks.
For sure. I mean, already the calendar that we have got over the last couple of weeks, I mean, we've been to the likes of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Magny-Cours, Daytona, and Long Beach. Next week, we head to the Nürburgring for the final stop in Europe, I do believe, before we round off the season with a couple of circuits, of course, Detroit and Sebring, 11 and 12 in terms of the final 2 weeks of this season to round off season number 1. But that rounds off our action here for round number 8. We've been at the Virginia International Raceway. It's been myself, Zach Sweeney, Cameron Roger alongside me in the commentary booth, with EQ Mary Carla behind the scenes, trying to follow each and every bit of the action and really just trying to queue up the replays of some of the mistakes that we saw. It will be us back in the commentary booth February 10th, 2023, 20:45 GMT, 8:45 p.m. in the UK, whatever time zone that is for you around the world. We hope to see you then. But in the meantime, take care and goodbye.